So you want to add Kazuha to your party, do you? Well, it's a good choice, especially now that the Leaves in the Wind event is going on. There's a more chance that somebody who is free to play can get their hands on them, as well as people who actually spend money, since there's a 50% chance per 5-star during the event. And I have to say that he is very much worth it. Before I go ahead and jump into Kazuha, there are chapters in the video. If you're interested in a specific point of Kazuha, go ahead and skip to that part. Otherwise, stick all the way through. So let's talk about Kazuha. The things I'm going to go over are as follows. His lore, well, his basic lore. Basic lore, his artifacts, well, the basic artifacts I run with. The weapons, the abilities, including his basic attack, his ability, his E, and his ultimate. How to use them, a team comp or my team comp that I use, and then finally, that is the end of the video. We'll wrap it up there, okay? So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into Kazuha's lore. Kaedahara Kazuha. Birthday is 10/29. His affiliation is the Crew. His vision is Anemo, and his constellation is Acer Plamatum, a wandering samurai from Inazuma, who is currently with Li Wei Crew Fleet, a gentle and carefree soul whose heart hides a great many burdens from the past. Most people who meet Kaedahara Kazuha for the first time might be inclined to assume that he is just a trainee sailor with the Crew Fleet. After all, he is a gentle soul who enjoys reciting poetry when idle, and who speaks to everyone in a leisurely manner. Who could tell that he is a wanted man throughout Inazuma? Even Baidu, ever the good judge of character, could not tell that Kazuha could wield a sword with such skill of a seasoned warrior when she first decided to take him in. Who knows if it was the storms of life that smoothed out his rough edges, or if his natural restraint has kept his edge sheathed. And that is Kazuha's lore, so let's go ahead and move on to the next thing I want to cover, his artifacts, or at least how I like to run his artifacts. So how I have Kazuha built is with Viridescent Veneer, I think is how it's pronounced, which allows me to have 2 pieces for a 15% damage bonus to Anemo, or Anemo, I actually don't know how it's pronounced, and then 4-piece set increases swirl damage by 60%, decreases opponent's elemental resist to the element infused in the swirl by 40% for 10 seconds, which I'll explain why that is so good for Kazuha, unless you got it already, but I'll explain it for people who don't know. Ow, Katie! Your claws are in my skin. So for weapons with Kazuha, you got a couple different choices. You get the Freedom Sworn. I do not have the Freedom Sworn, so I can't use it. So instead, I went with the Iron Sting, which you can make at a smithy. What it does is when you deal elemental damage, it increases all of your damage by the following per refine: 6, 7.5, 9, 10.5, and then when it's fully refined, 12%. For 6 seconds with a max of 2 stacks, and can only occur every 1 second. So there is a little bit of room for experimentation. Maybe you'll find a weapon that's better suited for him. The Freedom Sworn is what I hear is the best, but Iron Sting right now is working for me, so I'm happy with it. So without further ado, we covered his lore, his artifacts, and the weapons that I like to use. So let's go ahead and jump into his abilities, starting with his basic attack, going over his scaling, and how his basic attack works. So his basic attack is Garyu Blade Work. A normal attack can perform up to 5 rapid strikes, and a charge attack consumes a certain amount of stamina to unleash 2 rapid sword strikes. A plunging attack plunges from midair to strike the ground below, damaging opponents along the path and dealing AoE damage upon impact. If the plunging attack is triggered by his ability, which we'll cover, it will be converted to plunging attack Midari Renzen. Plunging attack Midari Renzen. When a plunging attack is performed using the effects of the elemental skill, well, his ability, plunging attack damage is converted to a Nemo damage and will create a small wind tunnel via a secret blade technique that pulls in nearby objects and opponents. That is a huge part of his crowd control abilities and being able to group everybody up, allowing you to do a lot of cool shit, which I will show in the video. And here is the scaling for the basic attack for all those who are interested in it. I'll allow you guys to look for a little bit before I go ahead and move on to the next point. So his basic attack doesn't have much to go over, pretty much like any other swordsman in the game. Press it for a 5-hit combo, or you can charge it for 2 blade slash. Again, nothing too fancy, nothing too original, but it's worth covering anyway. With that being said, for his basic attack, not much to cover, but it's still worth covering for you guys. Now let's go ahead and move into his bread and butter, in my opinion, his E, or his ability that allows you to pull people in. So his ability's name, oh god, I'm gonna butcher this, is Chihabura? Hayabura. Unleashes a secret technique as fierce as the rushing wind that pulls objects and opponents towards Kazuha's current position before launching opponents within the AoE, dealing Anemo damage, and lifting Kazuha into the air on a rushing gust of wind within 10 seconds of remaining airborne after casting it. Kazuha can unleash a powerful plunging attack known as Midari Renzen. Can be used in midair. Hold charges up before unleashing a greater amino damage over a large AoE, then press mode. There is a difference between the two, obviously based on the description. One is you hold it and it pulls in more area and it does more damage. However, it adds another 4 seconds onto the cooldown, making it around 8-second cooldown. However, if you tap it, you can still pull them in, not a huge area, and then do the plunging attack with that. And then the cooldown is around 4 seconds. So the differences between the two are your situations. So you're either wanting to pull more people in and you need more distance to pull them in, and you're worth sacrificing some of that cooldown time, or you're just trying to get damage out there and they're already kind of grouped up together, so you just use your ability by tapping it. You have a 4-second cooldown and you're able to consistently sustain the damage on Kazuha, and you're able to constantly keep up the pressure and sustain damage using his ability. So to reiterate, there are 2 different times where you want to use those. So it's kind of up to your situation. If you're confident that you can make use with just a press, then use that for a shorter cooldown. Or if you need to pull more enemies in and you want to do more damage, then use your hold button, and then you'll be able to pull them in from farther distances at the cost of a greater cooldown. Also, like the description says, is this can basically be used as a double jump. I actually have some footage to show you. You're traveling with your glider and like you need a little bit more height. You can actually use Kazuha's E to boost you up just a little bit more and act as a double jump. Some of those hard to reach collectibles that maybe you just need a little bit more height to get to. And for those who are interested, here's the scaling. I'm just going to show it up here for a little bit so you guys can kind of get a feel for the scaling. My shit is not maxed out, so keep that in mind when you're looking at it. Still, really good scaling. Now that we kind of got his bread and butter, it's time to talk about his ultimate, which works in conjunction with his ability, with others' abilities and their ultimates for massive crowd control and sustained damage. So let's go ahead and jump over to the ultimate. So Kazuha's ultimate, funny enough, is called the Kazuha Slash of Kazuha's self-styled blade work, a single slash that strikes with the force of first winds of autumn, dealing AoE Anemo damage. The blade's passage will leave behind a field named Autumn Whirlwind that periodically deals AoE Anemo damage to opponents within its range. It has elemental absorption. If Autumn Whirlwind comes into contact with Hydro, Pyro, Cryo, or Electro, it will deal additional elemental damage of that type. Elemental absorption may only occur once per use. So what that basically means in layman's terms is throw an element on an enemy, whether it's Hydro, Pyro, Cryo, or Electro, preferably somebody's ability that's last or ultimate that continuously does the same thing like his does, that sends a periodic burst. Therefore, it will always trigger a swirl effect, which, according to his stats and his scaling, will make him do even more damage with his Anemo swirl effect. So I will go into some characters later that will help boost those effects that you might want to keep in mind when you're building the party. And here is the scaling of the ultimate for anybody that wants to see that. Again, my stuff is not maxed out, so keep that in mind when you look at these numbers, okay? So let's talk about one of his passive talents, Summon Swordsmanship. If Chihabura, which is his first ability, comes into contact with Hydro, Pyro, Cryo, Electro when cast, this ability will absorb that element And if plunging attack Madari Renzen, it will be used before the effect expires, and it will deal an additional 200% attack of the absorbed elemental type as damage. This will be considered plunging attack damage. Elemental absorption may only occur once per use. So that is another reason why you want to scale up your normal attack over everything else, because your plunging attack actually scales with your normal attack level. So keep that in mind when you are building Kazuha. This is where it can kind of get confusing with the numbers, however, keep with me, and I'll do my best to explain his next passive talent, which is called Poetics of Fubutsu. Upon triggering a swirl reaction, Kazuha will grant all party members a 0.04% elemental damage bonus to the element absorbed by swirl for every point of elemental mastery he has for 8 seconds. Bonuses for different elements obtained through this method can coexist. So the best way I can explain that, so I'm gonna use some basic numbers here. Your elemental mastery will differ. However, for this example, let's use a base elemental mastery of 200. That means that 200 times, and I could be completely doing this wrong, feel free to let me know in the comments if I'm wrong with my math. If 0.04% times 200 of your elemental mastery is 0.08, would be 8% bonus damage. Now that can go up with your elemental damage. So 8% is nothing to scoff at, especially if you're building him as an elemental mastery. So keep that in mind, that all bonus damage is good damage, and focus on elemental mastery if you want to reap the maximum benefits from his passive here. So let's go over how you would use Kazuha, at least how I use Kazuha. So he is a massive crowd control component to the team. So usually the fights will start out with him pulling in the opponent and then keeping them trapped there. Another thing you can do with his ability, you got to remember, Kazuha is all about crowd control. Pull the enemies in, do massive damage, you using another character if you can manage it, or use more of Kazuha to your advantage and keep them controlled so you don't have to worry about them attacking you. You can pull in targets with Kazuha right after you use the ultimate, so that they're all grouped up and they're getting hit by whatever you got. They're getting hit by Pyro, Cryo, Swirl on top of that, Nemo damage. You could even throw in fucking Jean's ability for more amino damage on top of that. You can switch to Ito, and while they're grouped up getting hit with Cryo or Pyro or whatever you got going on, and absolutely wreck their shit and knock their HP down to 0 before you even know it. You will be clearing mobs and groups of enemies within seconds, if not even the tougher enemies, maybe a minute. That's pretty much how I've come to use him over my time playing with him. Is he's a crowd control, pull him in, wreck shit, or throw an ability, pull him in, wreck shit, or throw in an ultimate, throw in another area ultimate, Swirl, Cryo, Pyro, Hydro, switching to a character that can also do some physical damage or has Geo, get some of those free shields from it with Ito. The possibilities are endless for your playstyle with Kazuha. That's only how I like to use them. So let me go ahead, and now that that's covered, let's go ahead and jump into my team comps that I like to use with him, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up the video, okay? So right now, again, there's plenty of room for experimentation. This is just how I like to have my team set up for the moment. Ito up front, Kazuha in second, followed by Bennett. And you're probably asking, Tim, why do you put Bennett in there? Well, that's a good question. Shut your fucking mouth and I'll tell you. I'm just kidding, I love you guys. Bennett's ultimate can throw down a Pyro Area of Effect healing circle, which also combines with the ultimate of Kazuha to do pyro damage on top of that, and it makes Swirl happen. And then in number 4 I have Jean. She is another character that has an AoE healing circle. Everything is going your way. It definitely feels like that with Kazuha. You always feel like you are in control. You are in control. The enemies cannot attack you. You are in control. And now we're on to the end of the video, guys. Thank you, Annex family. Thank you, Annex crew, so much for watching. I hope the video helped you out. If it did, hit that like button, leave a comment, leave me some feedback. If you are interested in any more guides for characters, I have a short playlist of people that will show up right here, and I'll also give you a guide for Ito right here. Click on those if you are interested. I hope everybody has a good rest of their day or night, depending on when they watch this. And again, love you all, and I'll see you in the next guide, all right? Peace.